the underwater memorial. This is the stub of the casing sticking up above the ocean floor. And they installed this bell cap on it that says, "In memory of the Deepwater 11." Okay, next slide. So here are the questions. Where were the BP supervisors during the discussion of the negative test? Well, we kind of know where they were now because they had to give testimony when they were when they were indicted for crimes. Why were the results of the negative test not required to be communicated to the team on shore? Now, that doesn't mean the team on shore would have got it right, but there would have been kind of a dispassionate set of eyes over here looking at it. I think that would have been a wise choice. Call somebody. Say, look, we're kind of confused out here. We're going to admit it. What do you think? And maybe the somebody on shore would have said, well, I'm confused too, darn it. Let's open the drill pipe side up and see if the thing will bleed to zero or not. That was not required, and it didn't happen. So remember, James Baker in his investigation in 2007 said, BP places profit before safety. The Macondo well was over time and over budget. This all proved, of course, to be enormously penny wise but pound foolish. Go ahead. All right, so here's some of the aftermath. This guy was really kind of the sacrificial lamb. BP engineer Kurt Mix was charged with obstruction of justice and found guilty in a really quick trial, December 2013. He was actually going to be sentenced, but somehow, some way, he got that overturned and they were granted a new trial. And they also dropped the charges. They dropped the obstruction charge and knocked it down to I don't know what the hell this is, computer fraud and abuse. Anybody in here ever done that with your computer? I'll bet I have. So be careful, they'll come get you. Anyway, he received probation. Now, he claims that he pled guilty only to get this over with. But I'm not so sure about that. He was maybe fixing to go to jail. Former BP Vice President David Rainey is charged with obstructing Congress. This charge is dismissed and then reinstated. And he went to trial and was acquitted in June 2015. How much obstruction of Congress can one person do? I think they do a pretty good job on their own. Now, these guys down here, these are a couple of interesting characters. Donald Vadrine and Robert Kaluza. They were the BP on-site supervisors. And they refused to testify. They did not testify in any of the boards of inquiry. BP had them somewhere else. But finally, they were charged with manslaughter. And the charge was basically stemming around what the feds said was the negligent interpretation of the negative pressure test. Now, believe me, the law is a wonderful thing, but lawyers like to debate minutia. And finally, this charge was kicked out because the actual statute says that captains, engineers, first officers, anybody in control of a steamship, okay, Macondo wasn't a steamship. Kick it out. But the feds wouldn't give up, so they charged these two with a misdemeanor, which was a violation of the Clean Water Act. And Vadrine actually pled guilty to that charge. Kaluza said, if I'm going to be guilty, you're going to have to make me be guilty. So he went to trial. Vadrine actually testified for the prosecution. I'll bet those guys aren't friends anymore. And believe it or not, Kaluza was acquitted. Okay, next slide. All right, so now let's get to the BP issues. this is really the only interesting part of all of this. The total cost to BP was $53.8 billion. Now, if there's any saving grace in any of this, and there's damned little, it's good that a huge multinational major oil company was in charge of this. What do you figure would have happened had Anadarko been the operator of this well? They were a partner. Well, they'd have declared bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. Now, if they declare bankruptcy, guess who's next? The United States Navy. Now, the Navy, good as they are, I'm pretty sure have very limited experience fighting an undersea oil well blowout. So thank heavens BP didn't declare bankruptcy. Thank heavens they stood to, worked the problem, and finally got it fixed. They get credit for that in my book. Now, Transocean, interestingly enough, they collected $750 million in insurance for loss of the rig. Yeah, boy. Okay, next one. All right, so let's talk about the dispersants now. The dispersants, that's a chemical. I'm going to smear this out on the oil, and it's going to disperse it. In fact, they were clever enough to inject dispersants down where the plume is coming out at the broken wellhead. Now, dispersants, they take that oil and they break it up into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller droplets. Now, an oil droplet, the way we like to think of it, you put this droplet that big in water, it goes right to the top. It's a lighter fluid. You make it small enough, though, and it doesn't do that anymore. Now it moves wherever the currents want to push it. This is no longer a bubble rising under what in academia we call Stokes' law. It is now being smeared out sideways in what academia calls Brownian motion. The size of the droplet matters. So where does stuff go? Well, I'm not sure. Next slide. Now let's see. What would you choose? If I were BP and I'm looking at this nightmare in front of me, I know already how bad an oil spill looks like when it gets to shore, right? I mean, it's a horrendous mess. Beaches oiled, and you haven't seen one picture in here of the terrible pictures of wildlife coated in oil. I left them out because I don't like to look at them either. So BP knew about all of that. So what would you choose? If that'd been my well, I'd have been pouring the dispersants to it also. Let's try to keep this stuff out in the water and hope that it's better out there than if it ever gets to the shore. Okay, now I'm not exactly sure what the end effect of this is all going to be. There are some studies going on trying to figure out where did the oil go and ultimately what's its impact on the marine environment. Time will tell on that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. But they have found oil on the ocean floor smeared out down current from where the blown well was. No doubt where that came from. Exactly what it does, I don't know. As one of the BP executives said and then got smacked for it, well, the Gulf of Mexico is a big place. Yeah. There's a lot of water out there. Okay, that's true. Mother Nature or Father Nature will heal a lot of ills given enough time. But I don't think anybody can say what this oil on the ocean floor and what the dispersant might mean. That will come later. Okay, next one. We're done. Thank you. Questions? Sir.
Paul, excellent talk. When you go to well control school, basic, you cover all those different pressure regimes. And I'm just did everyone have their well control card up to date?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I mean, as far as I know, when they realized they had a problem, it was too late anyway. But but I can't answer that question. I don't know. Yes, sir.
Yeah, when did Sir Brown go back and actually start asking for more profits, better bottom line?
I don't have an exact date on that. Whenever he was chairman of the board of BP.
Looking for a timeline from the time he said this, they had the first.
Well, the first serious accident in this country was the Texas City refinery explosion, which was in 2005. Yes, sir?
Was that casing string a combination string, or was it 7-inch all the way to the surface? It looked, your diagram looked like there were two sides.
It was 7-inch until it cleared the top of the 9 5/8 liner. And then it crossed back over, as I recall, to 9 5/8. Now, the casing design has been looked at ad infinitum. And I don't think there was anything wrong with the casing design. Now, if you wanted to pick at it, you could pick at the placement of some handy little items they call rupture discs. I don't think the rupture discs ever ruptured. Had they, the escape of the fluid would have been into another annulus, and that annulus would have been exposed to bare rock. So if the rupture discs rupture, some of that fluid's going out, and if it fractures the bare rock, it's going out there. But I don't think that happened.
Would it have been better to set a liner instead of a long string where they could stop?
Okay. BP had statistics that'll fill up this room because they knew that question was coming. Now, if that had been my well, absolutely I think the liner would have been the choice. It's faster to run, and when you test a liner top, you're testing it right down there. But, you know, as Disraeli, one of the great English prime ministers, said about statistics, statistics lie along the same path as lies and damned lies. So you can prove anything you want with statistics, right? BP had statistics that showed, oh, this liner's the way to go. I mean, the long string's the way to go.
I think in my mind, one of the biggest engineering marvels of the whole thing was when they capped well, and how did they do that? I mean, because you have all this oil coming in, you had this rig that falls into the ocean.
Well, the rig, fortunately, the rig did not sink right on top of the wellhead.
It didn't sink on top of the
No,
wellhead.
it sank. They know where it is. They've got it
You got all
mapped.
this oil coming up.
Yeah.
How do they cap that well?
Anybody seen an onshore blowout capped where part of the wellhead's still good? What they do is they take off the broken flange and they expose a good flange. When I first saw that wellhead, that's what it looked to me like. It said, hey, I see a good flange here. And in the end, that's what they did. Now, it's not as easy 5,000 feet below the surface. They had to do all of this with specially constructed, remote-operated vehicles. But they were able to take that bad flange off, pull it off to the side, and then lower the capping stack down with a good flange. Go over the bolts, torque it up, shut it in, we're done. That's how they kill lots of wells onshore, and that's how they did this one.
So the liner's still on it, so they cap.
The well,
so
this
the
is
well's
what.
not flowing on the bottom of the ocean. It's actually flowing above.
Yeah, it's flowing out the top of the blowout preventers. So this good flange I'm talking about is the last flange on the top of the blowout preventers.
Because I was thinking maybe there was something seared on the bottom.
No, not yet,
Okay.
not yet. Sir.
Is it understood what caused the float equipment to fail?
Well, there's lots of speculation about that. Pardon?
Good question.
He wants to know why the float equipment failed. No one will really ever know the answer to that. They had some problems with the float equipment, though. This offshore float equipment isn't quite the same as the stuff we're used to onshore.